Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web novel Solo Apocalypse, taken from Royal Road. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 10. The increase in my wisdom wasn't something immediately tangible. Over the course of the day, however, I became grounded in myself, an acceptance of this reality, my place in the chaos, and finally, how to proceed. I thought it was fairly likely I was just one amongst countless others whisked away by the apocalypse. A part of the university had been teleported into some unknown wilderness. It stood to reason, across the world, similar happenings occurred. Wisdom was understanding, judgment, and experience. A certain self-awareness of myself and the world. It allowed me to calm down, as much as one could expect. Enough to question what exactly was happening. Despite that, there were few answers forthcoming. This apocalypse came without warning, without preamble. I found myself with ample time to ponder. The forest was a swampy expanse, a place where life lurked under the waters, where howls broke the silent nights, and the rush of splashing waters was a sign of nature running its course. The forest breathed, and I was nothing but a speck of dust. 4 specks of dust. There was second, third, and fourth now. I covered a lot of ground, avoiding many dangers. I had caught sight of those wolves in the daylight. One of the clones had seen it. A dark-furred creature that swam just as fast as it bounded across the roots, four-legged and many-teethed. It was a different, less horrifying sight in broad daylight, mainly because it was herding around its young puppies, no taller than my knee at that. The sight was sobering. We'd been dropped into a foreign ecosystem and been immediately identified as prey, the bottom of the pyramid we humans used to stand at the top of. I kept away from the mother and its cubs. The water bottles I'd filled up from the building were barely dented considering the amount I'd scavenged. Still, my thoughts drifted to when my supplies of fresh water would run out. One of the clones had climbed to a higher vantage after seeing more of those green humanoids. They were gibbering at each other, ugly and knobbly. Goblins, I reminded myself. The term was perfect for them. They seemed to be arguing. It was a group of 5, again, a number I wondered was significant or not. It was the same amount that I'd encountered back at the campus. The same number I shook my thoughts away. There was a clear debate going on. I'd posted a clone to shatter them. I wasn't sure exactly what was possible in this world, but low profile at least would curb those unknown variables and allow me to stay hidden. I wanted to see what the creatures did for food and water, seeing as they were the most likened to human, if only just. My original body was far from the potential danger, protected by 3 clones of myself acting as a safety net. I slept under the watchful, careful eye of none other than myself, and moved with just as much caution. The problem was that I had no idea how to get out of this forest, or if it was even possible. It could go kilometers of hiking until I found other terrains, let alone other survivors. That could mean months of isolation, weeks if I was lucky. I hadn't expected to find another building. Expectations were just another thing to be broken in this reality. The goblins led me there, a building I didn't recognize from my university or city. It was a different style, more modern. A library, of all things. Its windows were shattered, curved architecture reduced to rubble in places. It looked like it had landed here, cracks over every surface. My clone, Fourth, paused as it came into view. It was being investigated by the goblins, prodded at with complete ignorance, as if they were unsure the walls would bite. It was a caution that I didn't ridicule them for. It was necessary. The building was larger than the science building, a true library, a collection of knowledge, and I hoped people. I perched for long minutes, hoping to see any sign, even bodies hinted at the possible survivors. I found nothing of the sort. The place was abandoned, empty. The front entrance was collapsed, but the second story had a balcony. I found a route path that led me to the correct elevation and climbed its side. The inside was almost impossibly untouched. Dirt, rubble, moss, bugs, plant life, but nothing damaged enough to ruin a bookshelf. Some of them, however, were taken apart. Windows were boarded, doorways barricaded. There had been people here. Hope surged in my chest like a butterfly quickly preyed upon by a bird of reality. The one thing I could rely on was myself. I doubted that was healthy thinking, and it didn't help that it was the truth. Still, I continued to explore. Eventually, I found a clue I'd been looking for. Where had everyone gone? The answer stared at me. A note lying on an empty receptionist's desk in the middle of the library, weighed down by a paperweight. To any survivors, none of us know what happened. Some of us are talking about biblical apocalypses, a reckoning of sorts, the end of the world. No one wants to die, though. If you see this, we left the library because no one left felt safe here. We lost people to the wolves, to those green things, alligator things in the water. We headed north to try and get out of this damned swamp. Jonathan, 6th day of the apocalypse. And that was it. In this place, the library was no less than a castle. It was safe. I wasn't sure if they understood what a treasure that was. Yet, I could understand just wanting to leave. In the swamp, humans were prey, just like anything else. Jonathan had dated the note, the 6th day. How long had it been? A little over a week, I guessed. They'd left 2 days ago? Without a single word said, 3 of my clones and the original adjusted their bearing. North it is. End of chapter. Chapter 11. There were 5 of me now because, in the chaos of everything, I'd done my math wrong. The realization had come to me, not because of careful rereading of Never Alone, but from an attempt to clone myself further. Skill, never alone. Even working alone, it never hurts to have another set of eyes. Better yet, even they're yours. You are able to replicate yourself to a certain degree and capacity. Max copies, wisdom plus willpower plus charisma divided by 10. Copies have half strength, constitution, dexterity, and agility. All other attributes are retained. The math amounted to 4 copies. I'd been including my original self in that total, but I wasn't a copy. That meant that there was room for another. But the monikers had begun to confuse me, referring to myself internally as first was what had led to the initial misunderstanding. I took my original self out of the system so that there were only 4 copies, the clones. First, second, third, fourth, and, of course, Evan himself, me. I questioned something, though. I'd tried, hadn't I, to clone myself again before I knew the limit. I remembered it clearly after creating third. I'd asked myself to do it again. I wasn't able to. Had I really been ignorant as to not try again? All that time, was there a limitation on the number I could create at once? You could have had an extra set of hands that entire time, Perth said to me. You could have saved him. Guilt washed over me, pushing me down. No clone of mine had anything to say to that. There was nothing but silent condemnation. I had already failed. This was just another way that it had happened. Ever since that first day, I hadn't died again. Somewhere along the way, that crippling fear of death became a strange acceptance, burgeoning confidence, courage against inevitability. I knew what it was like, so I could prepare myself. I hadn't died, but I did see death again. I dropped from the tree, 3 of me, and landed on a pair of goblins. I needed weapons. I grabbed their arms first, twisting their tools out of their grasp. Then, still overpowering, despite my halved attributes, I snapped their necks. My selves looked at each other, breathing. The moment washed over me before I crouched down to grab their things. Knives of surprisingly decent make. Short and stubby. The handle was decent and the blade was sharp. What else could I ask for? There's no turning back now, Evan, I spoke to myself. I hadn't crossed my mind, I'd been hearing it too. I looked to my clone, knowing that Never Alone gave me an unparalleled ability to talk to myself. No turning back, I agreed. This marked me as not a killer, but a survivor. Someone willing to adapt to this reality and embrace it. I told myself that, unable to escape the wriggling whisper of morality. I looked at the men across from me. They were me, of course, but I barely recognized them, beaten, battered, rugged. I was scraping at life. Not in the physical sense, but the mental. The weight of it all threatened to crush me, and yet somehow I was still breathing, ignoring it. I killed 3 more groups of 5 others over the course of the day, with a set of eyes acting as overwatch, 3 of me on the ground with sharp knives and a determination to do what needed to be done. It was terribly easy. Terrible, because that's what it felt like. Notice, you have leveled up, level 9. Nothing accompanied the message. It felt empty. I wasn't deserving of anything but that. This new circumstance was twisting who I was, and there was nothing I could do to combat that. What part of me remained, which part twisted, and what was lost? I couldn't say. I found signs of survivors on the 2nd day of traveling. I was moving faster than them, I knew. It only made sense given my ability to coordinate information and terrain. It was the remains of a camp. A fire had been burning between the crevice of the large roots too thick and wet to catch fire themselves. There were muddy prints on the ground I recognized as shoes. That simple sight allowed hope to blossom again. People were alive, just like me. That thought alone comforted me, but I prepared for the worst. This apocalypse had changed me, brought out the worst in me. I hesitated to think what it might do to others. It chilled me. On the 3rd day, I managed to hunt a bird. The meat was enough to make my tongue water, but I knew nothing of what was edible or not. I ripped the organs out, started a fire, and experienced the delicacy through a clone. Meat. I never thought I'd miss it so much. My clone, identical to myself, felt no side effects. I turned to the branches above the shore with great interest, tracking the locations where I'd seen those birds the most. It was no wonder the reptiles ate them so vigorously. They were delicious. I shared the bounty with my original self the next time, and it was heaven. A small luxury eaten with berries and fruit. The meal was so simple, yet so perfect. On the 4th day, I found them. A campfire around 20 people or so, and a handful of others watching the perimeter. A lot of people had that dead look in their eyes, staring at the fire. Everyone was muddy, wet, and looked miserable. I almost went down in person. Instead, after a moment's hesitation, a clone went down in my place. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the Tier 5 members, Marky, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Oakfield, Lord Azrakul, and it's difficult to pronounce. Thank you very much.